Khan for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا.
Thank you, Madam President. On the 2nd of November 1917, about 100 years ago, a British colonialist declaration was issued unilaterally and without consulting the Palestinians, the landowners. This declaration is called the Balfour Declaration, and it was approved by a handful of nations that have tried to legitimize it by inserting it into an instrument called the British Palestine Mandate in 1922. And we have heard our British colleague this morning expressing the pride of his country's governments for issuing this declaration, which is legally known internationally as a promise from someone who does not own to someone who does not deserve. This handful of nations operated as a colonialist company, and they have replicated in Palestine the two experiences of the East India Company and the Britain-South Africa Company, both experiences that have generated racist regimes in South Africa in what used to be called Southern Rhodesia. The UN did not seek caution or to rectify the mistake of this handful of nations, as it has done in many issues. Instead, it continued the same approach with regards to Palestine, and it adopted Resolution 181 in 1947, which provided for the partition of Palestine and the creation of the Israeli entity. This entity later enjoyed membership of the United Nations under pressure from powerful states. The support and protection provided by some states to Israel, including some permanent members of the Security Council, and the systemic and deliberate obstruction of the implementation of dozens of resolutions to end this occupation have led to Israel's arrogance in the region and in the Security Council chamber. It has led to Israel's expansion and further expropriation of Palestinian Arab land and the perpetration of crimes and aggression and violations against international humanitarian law and human rights law, which may rise to being crimes of war and crimes against humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, Resolution 273 of 1949 has outlined the conditions to accept Israel's membership at the United Nations. Israel was to comply with Resolution 181, which provided for the establishment of the Palestinian state. It was also required to comply with Resolution 194 of 1948, which provided for the return of Palestinian refugees to their homeland. But what has happened afterward was, unfortunately, the complete opposite. The United Nations implemented half of Resolution 181. It has allowed for the creation of Israel in Palestine, and it has denied Palestinians the right to establish their state. It has also completely abandoned implementation of Resolution 194, which provided for the return of Palestinian refugees. This multiplied the injustice suffered by the Palestinian people, and they remained under a racist occupation that is unparalleled in history. Ladies and gentlemen, my country is a regular element of the item, the situation in the Middle East, and we reaffirm once again that Syria's sovereign right in the Golan Heights on the borders of the 4th of June 1967 is not subject to compromise, and all occupied lands and rights must return to the rightful owners, and the settlers will have to leave our land sooner or later. We will not abandon our right to reclaim our occupied land and to liberate our citizens living under Israeli occupation in the Syrian Golan, by all means provided for by the UN Charter and the principles of the international law. The suspicious and continuing silence in the world in the face of Israel's policies and practices has encouraged Israel to continue to violate the separation of forces agreement and the resolutions of the Security Council. It has provided all forms of support to armed terrorist groups in the region in the area of separation, including Jabhat al-Nusra and Daesh, and it has facilitated support for these groups in the Ondof sites. Israel continued in its crimes through providing direct and indirect support to Daesh and through launching attacks, repeated attacks, on the territory of Syria in support of terrorist groups. So Israel is not only supporting Daesh in the occupied Syrian Golan, but inside Syria as well. It is supporting terrorist elements inside Syria. Ladies and gentlemen, my country believes that the Security Council still shoulders a historical responsibility in rectifying the course and restoring justice. The objective that gathers us here every month and for long years must culminate in, if the Security Council was indeed keen to achieve peace and security in the region, to take the necessary and immediate measures to end the Israeli occupation of Arab territory, including the Syrian Golan, and to withdraw from these occupied territories in the Syrian Golan and in Palestine and parts of southern Lebanon. It's to withdraw from them to the border of the 4th of June, 1967, and it is to implement resolutions 497, 338, and 242. Thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie le
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab